Hi, this is Mr. Den, and this is a screencast-o-matic for the Unit 4 summative test review on the executive branch. I'm just going to walk you through the points that you're going to need to know to be sure you're prepared for the exam, the summative exam. So the president's term and salary, we know that the compensation today is $400,000, and he gets $100,000 for expenses. He has plenty of other perks and benefits. He gets Camp David, the resort. He gets pension and sorry, health and dental insurance or coverage. The term limits of the president are now set by the 22nd Amendment at 2 terms. So you got to remember that there's 2 terms for the presidency, and we'll put that in there. 2 terms, and you get a maximum of 10 years. Okay. Oh, I guess it was up here. Sorry about that. FDR spent 4 years or 4 terms in office, and it was later that the 22nd Amendment limited presidents to 2 terms. Form requirements of the presidency: age, you have to be 35 years old. Residency, you have to have 14 years, and you have to be a natural-born citizen. Informal requirements: government experience is a plus. Money, most presidents are somewhat wealthy. And president's beliefs and characteristics. We know that presidents have generally been male, Protestant, married, and white. Of course, Barack Obama broke that mold when he was able to gain the presidency in the last election. Presidential succession. 25th Amendment set the succession, and it starts with the vice president, then the Speaker of the House, then the President pro tem, of the Senate, and then Secretary of State. Then the cabinet positions that follow. And you only have to know it down to the Secretary of State, but that's good enough, okay? The Electoral College system. The 12th Amendment set the Electoral College system up on separate ballots. You're voting for the Vice President and the President separately. That way you didn't have the second place guy getting to be the Vice President. Each state gets 1 elector for each representative and senator, plus the 3 for the District of Columbia. So in Minnesota, has 8 reps and 2 senators, total of 10 congresspersons, which means that we get 10 electors. Okay? Now, in all states except for 2, it's a winner-take-all system, which means that if you win the popular vote in your state, you're going to get all the electors from your state. The 2 states that are an exception to that are Maine and Nebraska. And that's proportional. Which means that whatever percentage of the vote you get, that's the proportion of the the electors that you get. So if you win half the vote, you're going to get half the electors. But that's only in Maine and Nebraska. The rest of the states are winner take all. So the majority of the electoral votes elects the president, so you actually are voting for a slate of electors who then elect the president. Now, it's possible to win without the majority of the popular vote. Think of the Gore Bush election of 2000. And there's been 3 other presidents that have been elected that way. In other words, they get more votes, popular votes, total votes, but they win the right states that have the majority of the electoral college votes. That's all you have to do is get a majority of the electoral college votes. 270 gets you there, because 538, right? That's the number of votes that are the total number of votes. So more than half of that's 270. 269 is exactly half. That's not enough. You need 270. Okay. Third parties can affect the elections in that they can take votes away from a candidate so that they can't win that state's popular vote, and therefore they don't get the electors for that state in the electoral college. We talked about that in a different unit. We're going to eliminate this right here for now. The cabinet is the secretaries. The executive office of the president are support roles like the councils and the advisors. The 7 duties of the president, talked about head of state, which is different as he welcomes dignitaries or goes out to see other countries. He just represents the figurehead or leader of our country. The more formal position, the chief executive, is where he's the person that executes or makes the laws happen. The tools that the president has are fairly limited, however. He does have the power of executive order, which has the power of law. And we have to do some formatting here, don't we? And that's just to make laws happen. So if Congress passes a law and the president has to create an agency or set some regulations to make that law happen, he can issue an executive order, which is different than an executive agreement, which you're going to talk about later. He can appoint officials like federal court judges, and he can appoint cabinet members, very important positions. He can remove officials, but he can't remove federal court judges. So if somebody's not doing a good job, he can remove them. There's also the question of impoundment, but it's unconstitutional because the president in impoundment decides not to spend money that the Congress has allocated. So if the Congress votes to build a bridge, the president doesn't want to build the bridge. He just doesn't make the orders or order the money to be spent, which the Supreme Court has ruled as unconstitutional. The president has the congressional responsibility to execute the laws as Congress has passed them. Okay, so that's something that has been tried in the past, but presidents aren't able to control the purse strings. The next hat is the chief legislature, and there's 3 tools that the president has. He can meet with legislators and arm twist to try to get them to, agree with him or convince them to agree with him on legislation, but it's tough. He also can give patronage and favors like jobs and support, but that's not always something that he can do, and is fairly limited. He also has a veto power, and that's the most direct power that the president has as the chief legislator. He can veto bills. The Congress has the right to try to overturn or override those vetoes, but it's still a pretty powerful tool that the president has. Now, the president also is an economic leader. He plans and sets the budget every year for our country, and he has a lot of help from the economic advisors. And he's also the party leader, which often conflicts with his role to execute the laws and get legislation, because he has to work with both parties, and if he's the leader of one party, it's difficult to ignore the other party without creating some problems. So there's often is a conflicting role. It puts him in a tough position. He's also, of course, our chief diplomat. He negotiates agreements with other countries, and executive agreements, they're informal and between heads of state, and they don't need ratification. by the Senate. But formal treaties with countries must be ratified by the Senate with a 2/3 vote. Whoops. Okay? Now, some people say it's the most direct role that and powerful role that the president has as commander-in-chief, because he can order troops wherever he wants. We've talked about the War Powers Act that Congress has to bring back troops after 60 days if they so choose. But we also have talked about that this law is probably going to be ruled unconstitutional if it ever gets challenged. Now we know that bureaucrats are people that work in government and agencies to help execute the laws, and this is where you've heard the term red tape. It's all the things that you have to do to qualify or to participate in government programs. Government corporations are run by the president, and because he's the chief executive. It's like the post office and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and other groups are government or agencies or organizations. And then, of course, the president has a cabinet to support him. Those cabinet departments are listed here. There's 15 of them. The most recently added one is Homeland Security. Now, these cabinet officers, must be ratified, or confirmed is the right word, by Congress. But they're very important positions that help the president by running his departments and agencies and giving him advice if called on. So there's your test review for the executive branch, Unit 4. Good luck.